Hi, welcome to First Year Microeconomics. In this presentation, we're going to continue our discussion of comparative advantage. If you haven't seen the earlier videos, I suggest you look at them first. In this presentation, we're going to continue our example, but look at how prices can actually coordinate specialisation and trade. Just a reminder of what we're talking about. Comparative advantage can lead to gains from trade for individuals when they have different opportunity costs. So if two people specialise according to their lower opportunity cost, they can then trade and both become better off. In the example that we've been using in these presentations, we've seen that Tom has a lower opportunity cost of producing tomatoes compared to Becky. He gives up 2 kilograms of potatoes whenever he produces 1 kilogram of tomatoes, whilst Becky gives up 3 kilograms of potatoes when she produces another kilogram of tomatoes. But Becky has a lower marginal opportunity cost of producing potatoes. That follows because the opportunity cost of potatoes in terms of tomatoes foregone is just 1 over, or the inverse, of the opportunity cost of tomatoes in terms of potatoes foregone for Becky. And if we have a dictator that tells Tom that he must specialise in tomato production, or the dictator tells Becky that she must specialise in potato production, then total production can go up. Tom and Becky can end up with more output for the same level of work. But do we really need a dictator to organise this? Well, in the last presentation we saw that the answer to that question is no. Tom and Becky could get together, work out their opportunity costs, work out who should specialise in what production, and then organise the specialisation and the trade between themselves, and they could both be better off by doing that. But if you think about it, that's not the way real economies work. Real economies involve anonymous interactions. In other words, when you go to the bread shop, you don't have to know the baker by name. You don't have to have met the baker before, but you can still buy bread. And when you go out to work, the people who buy the products from the company that you work for, they don't have to know you. They don't have to know your opportunity cost. So in the real world, specialisation and trade occurs without us knowing about each other. It occurs through anonymous trades. How on earth does that happen? The key to understanding how a real economy organises specialisation according to opportunity cost and then trade through arm's length anonymous interactions is to understand the price system. Individuals just need to know the prices for the various goods and services they're interested in producing and consuming. And then they can make individual decisions based on those prices. And those individual decisions will lead to specialisation and trade that can make all individuals better off. There are 2 key parts to this. First is that prices contain all the information we need for specialisation and trade. The second is that information is almost certainly unobtainable through any other method. So not only is the price system a way of coordinating specialisation and trade, it is certainly a lot better than central planning or a dictator, because the dictator or the central planner will never have enough information. They can never replicate that information that is in the price system. This understanding of the coordinating role of the price system is a major contribution of the 20th century economist Friedrich von Hayek. In order to be able to understand the role of prices, I'm going to play a little thought experiment. I'm going to provide Tom and Becky with the price of potatoes, which they can both have access to, and also a dollar price for tomatoes. Then I'm going to ask a very simple question. Tom and Becky could choose not to trade. Tom can keep his original bundle of 6 potatoes and 3 tomatoes, and Becky can keep her original bundle of 12 kilograms of potatoes and 4 kilograms of tomatoes. However, they will also have the option of being able to trade at the prices that I've set for them. So Tom, for example, will have the option of being able to produce 0 potatoes and 6 tomatoes. That gives him 3 more tomatoes than he would have had without specialization. And then he can sell those 3 tomatoes at the price that I've set, use the money to buy potatoes, and we're going to check, does this make Tom better off? And the answer to that question is going to be really easy. He's going to end up with 3 tomatoes, but will he have more or less potatoes? And we're also going to do the same thought experiment for Becky. So given those prices, we're going to ask, would Becky prefer to go to the marketplace and specialise by producing an extra 9 potatoes but giving up 3 tomatoes? And then, given those extra potatoes, she can sell some, use the money to buy 3 more tomatoes, so she's back at her original number of 4 tomatoes. And if she does that, is she better off or worse off? How do we judge that? Will she end up with more or less potatoes? So in both cases we're going to ask, does trade make Tom and Becky better off? And the measure we're going to use is we're going to be holding their number of tomatoes fixed and asking, do they have more or less potatoes by the trade at the market prices? Notice the key thing is they don't need to know each other, they just need to know the prices. I'm going to show that some prices are able to coordinate trade, not just any old prices. And we're going to see that what matters is what we call relative prices. It's not going to be the absolute dollar price, it's going to be the effective price of a tomato in terms of potatoes foregone, and the effective price of potatoes in terms of tomatoes foregone. To see what I mean by that, imagine that potatoes cost $10 a kilo, tomatoes cost $5 a kilo. Well, then you need to produce 2 kilograms of tomatoes to get the $10 by selling them to buy 1 kilogram of potatoes. So in that sense, the relative price of potatoes in terms of tomatoes is 2. Okay, so let's give Becky and Tom some prices. Let's start with a dollar price of $1 per kilogram for potatoes and $2 per kilogram for tomatoes. What does that mean in terms of our relative prices? Well, tomatoes are twice as expensive as potatoes. You would need 2 kilograms of potatoes. You would need to sell 2 kilograms to buy 1 kilogram of tomatoes. So the price of a tomato is 2 potatoes foregone. Similarly, the price of a potato is half a kilogram of tomatoes foregone. So they're the relative prices. Would Tom, given these prices, want to carry out our little thought experiment and specialise in tomatoes? Well, if he does so and goes to the market, Tom, with his 6 tomatoes, is able to sell those for $12. He has no potatoes. So, what can he do? Can he buy back his 3 tomatoes? Well, yes he could. If he did so, that would cost him $6 and leave him with $6. How many potatoes can he buy for those $6? He can buy exactly 6 potatoes. So from Tom's perspective, he actually doesn't care. He could stay without trade, producing 6 potatoes and 3 tomatoes, or he could specialise in tomatoes, get the $12 that earns him, and buy 3 tomatoes and 6 potatoes. What about Becky? Well, let's suppose Becky produces a bundle of 21 potatoes and 1 kilogram of tomatoes. How much money does she earn? Well, the potatoes she can sell for $21. The tomato she can sell for $2. So her total income or earnings from producing that bundle of goods is $23. Now what can she do with the $23? Imagine she takes that money and she buys back 4 kilograms of tomatoes. The 4 kilograms of tomatoes is going to cost her $8. So she's going to have 23 minus 8, $15 left to spend on potatoes. So she can actually buy 15 kilograms of potatoes rather than 12 and still keep her 4 kilograms of tomatoes. So Becky is definitely going to be much better off trading at these prices. Tom is no worse off, but Becky gains by trading at these prices. So do these prices work? Well, yes, just. What we've seen is that if tomatoes are twice as expensive as potatoes, then Tom doesn't get any benefit out of specialisation and trade, but Becky strictly benefits from trade. She ended up with 3 kilograms of extra potatoes. But remember that those 3 kilograms of potatoes was all of the extra production that Becky and Tom created by the specialisation. So in that sense, in this example, Becky's managed to get all the gains from trade. Why? Well, notice that at these relative prices, 1 kilogram of tomatoes has a cost in terms of potatoes of 2. Remember that that is exactly the same as Tom's opportunity cost. Remember, his opportunity cost of 1 kilogram of tomatoes was 2 kilograms of potatoes foregone. So if the price of tomatoes in terms of potatoes, the relative price, is the same as Tom's opportunity cost, Tom was indifferent for any trade, and Becky got all the gains from trade. Indeed, if the relative price of tomatoes in terms of potatoes was any lower, for example, if the dollar price of tomatoes was $5 a kilo, the dollar price of potatoes was the same, $5 a kilo, so the relative price would be 1 kilogram of potatoes given up every time you want 1 kilogram of tomatoes, then you would see that Tom, in fact, wouldn't want to specialise and trade. Those prices wouldn't work. And I suggest you do this example for yourself. However, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to keep the price of potatoes at $1 a kilo, and I'm going to raise the price of tomatoes to $3 per kilo. So I'm increasing the relative price of tomatoes. The relative price of tomatoes is now 3 kilograms of potatoes foregone, and at the same time, I've obviously lowered the relative price of potatoes. The relative price of potatoes is now 1/3 of a kilogram of tomatoes foregone. Will Tom want to specialise given these prices? Well, let's check. Notice that at these prices, if Tom produces 6 kilograms of tomatoes, he now gets $18. If he uses some of his money to buy back 3 kilograms of tomatoes, that's going to cost him $9. He's going to have $9 left over to spend on potatoes, so instead of 6 potatoes, Tom can now buy 9 kilos of potatoes with the $9. So Tom's going to be better off by having 9 kilograms of potatoes. He'll be 3 kilograms of potatoes better off. What about for Becky? Well, if Becky produces 21 kilograms of potatoes and 1 kilogram of tomatoes, she's going to make 21 plus $3, $24. Let's say she now buys back the 4 kilograms of tomatoes that she wants to consume. That's going to cost her $12 and leave her with $12 to spend on potatoes. But potatoes are $1 a kilo, so she can buy exactly 12 kilograms of potatoes. So with these prices, it's Becky who's indifferent between trading or not. If she specialises, she just gets enough money to buy her original bundle, and it's Tom who gets all the benefits. He gets all the gains from trade at these prices. He gets the extra 3 kilograms of potatoes. So do these prices work? Well, yes, just. Becky's indifferent, but Tom really likes to trade at these prices. That's not surprising because the price of tomatoes has gone up compared to the price of potatoes, and Tom specialises in tomatoes. Tom gets all the gains from trade. Notice again that Becky is indifferent and the relative prices in the marketplace just happen to be exactly the same as Becky's opportunity cost. And you can check this. Push the price in terms of dollars of tomatoes up to say $4 or $5 whilst keeping the price of potatoes at $1 a kilo, and you'll find out that Becky will not want to trade at those prices. So what have we got? If the relative price of tomatoes in terms of potatoes in the marketplace is equal to Tom's opportunity cost of tomatoes, he's indifferent to trade and Becky gets all the gains from trade. If the relative price of tomatoes in terms of potatoes in the marketplace is equal to Becky's opportunity cost, then she's indifferent to trade and Tom gets all the gains from trade. Well, that suggests that what we should look for in terms of prices that work for trade is prices that fall in between the opportunity costs. So let's check this out. Let's set the price of potatoes in the marketplace at $2 a kilo and the price of tomatoes in the marketplace at $5 a kilo. What are the relative price? Well, it's now 2.5 kilograms of potatoes per kilogram of tomatoes. And that's between Tom's opportunity cost, which was 2 kilograms of potatoes per kilogram of tomatoes, and Becky's opportunity cost, which was 3 kilograms of potatoes per kilogram of tomatoes. And if we do this, look what happens. Tom, in the marketplace, can now produce his 6 kilograms of tomatoes for $30. With that $30, he can buy back his 3 kilograms of tomatoes. That's going to cost him $15, and he has $15 left over. But potatoes are now $2 a kilo, so with $15, Tom can now buy 7.5 or 7.5 kilograms of potatoes. What about Becky? Becky goes to the marketplace. She produces 21 kilos of potatoes. She can sell those for $42, plus a kilo of tomatoes. Becky has $47. With that money, if she buys back her 4 kilograms of tomatoes, she'll have exactly $27 left over. And she can use that $27 to buy 13.5 kilograms of potatoes. So Becky has ended up better off by 1.5 kilograms of potatoes. Tom has ended up better off by 1.5 kilograms of potatoes. They've shared the 3 kilogram of potatoes gains from trade equally. These prices work. So, if the relative prices in the market are strictly between Tom's and Becky's opportunity costs, then we have a great result. Tom and Becky will choose to specialise according to their comparative advantage, and they will then trade to a bundle of goods that's better than the one they could have got without trade. They don't need a dictator, they don't need to know each other, they just need to know the prices. Notice that it is the relative prices here that are the key. It's the price in the marketplace of a tomato in terms of potatoes foregone, and that has to lie between the opportunity costs. That's the right prices to get trade, to get specialisation, to have the market work. Notice also that when we looked at Tom's decision and we looked at Becky's decision, we separated out their specialisation to earn income from how they spent that income. In other words, we don't need to know whether Tom or Becky like both potatoes and tomatoes and how much they like them, exactly what bundle they would want. All we need to do to drive specialisation in the marketplace according to comparative advantage is have each of Tom and Becky seeking to maximise their income given the market prices. And then they can use that income to buy the goods and services they want. This idea that the market enables us to separate out our decisions on what we produce and how we earn our income from our decisions about what goods and services we actually want to consume is sometimes called the Fisher separation theorem, after the famous American economist Irving Fisher. And this separation is critical to analyse markets in the real world because it enables us to separate out Tom's and Becky's supply decisions, which depend on their marginal opportunity costs, from Tom and Becky's demand decisions, which depend on their individual preferences. And this separation between supply-side decisions and demand-side decisions is going to be critical in every market we analyse in this course. So let's summarise where we've got to. We have shown that if individuals can specialise according to their comparative advantage, they can gain from trade. But they don't need a dictator to organise this. They don't even need to know each other. They just need to know the relative prices of goods and services in the market and then act in their own self-interest. And this is Adam Smith's proverbial invisible hand that guides people acting in their own self-interest to outcomes that are better for society as a whole. But we've seen that not all prices work. Specialisation and trade needs the right market prices. So for the rest of this course, we're going to be looking at how prices are formed in the marketplace, where prices come from, and how the market gets the right prices.